His friends jumped off their stools and hurried over at the sight of him. "I'm fine," he said as he made his slow way into the common room. His eyes were wild around the edges, like a skittish horse. "I'm fine, I'm fine." He dropped the bundled blanket onto the nearest table, where it knocked hard against the wood as if it were full of stones. His clothes were crisscrossed with long straight cuts. His gray shirt hung in loose tatters, except where it was stuck to his body, stained a dark, sullen red. Graham tried to ease him into a chair. "Mother of God, sit down, Carter. What happened to you? Sit down." Carter shook his head stubbornly. "I told you, I'm fine. I'm not hurt that bad." "How many were there?" Graham said. "One," Carter said, "but it's not what you think." "God damn it, I told you, Carter." Old Cobb burst out with the sort of frightened anger only relatives and close friends can muster. "I told you for months now, you can't go out alone, not even as far as Baden. It ain't safe." Jake laid a hand on the old man's arm, quieting him. "Just take a sit," Graham said, still trying to steer Carter into a chair. "Let's get that shirt off you and get you cleaned up." Carter shook his head. "I'm fine. I got cut up a little, but the blood is mostly Nellie's. I jumped on her, killed her about 2 miles outside town, past the old stone bridge." A moment of serious silence followed the news. The smith's apprentice laid a sympathetic hand on Carter's shoulder. "Damn, that's hard. She was gentle as a lamb, too. Never tried to bite or kick when you brought her in for shoes. Best horse in town. Damn, He trailed off. "Damn, I don't know what to say." He looked around helplessly. Cobb finally managed to free himself from Jake. "I told you," he repeated, shaking a finger in Carter's direction. "There's folks out lately that would kill you for a pair of pennies, let alone a horse and cart. What are you going to do now? Pull it yourself?" There was a moment of uncomfortable quiet. Jake and Cobb glared at each other, while the rest seemed at a loss for words, unsure of how to comfort their friend. The innkeeper moved carefully through the silence. Arms full, he stepped nimbly around Shep and began to arrange some items on a nearby table. A bowl of hot water, shears, some clean linen, a few glass bottles, needle, and gut. "This never would have happened if he'd listened to me in the first place," old Cobb muttered. Jake tried to quiet him, but Cobb brushed him aside. "I'm just telling the truth. It's a damn shame about Nellie, but he better listen now or he'll end up dead. You don't get lucky twice with those sort of men." Carter's mouth made a thin line. He reached out and pulled the edge of the bloody blanket. Whatever was inside flipped over once and snagged on the cloth. Carter tugged harder and there was a clatter like a bag of flat river stones upended onto the tabletop. It was a spider as large as a wagon wheel, black as slate. The smith's apprentice jumped backward and hit a table, knocking it over, almost falling to the ground himself. Cobb's face went slack. Graham, Shep, and Jake made wordless, startled sounds and moved away, raising their hands to their faces. Carter took a step backward that was almost like a nervous twitch. Silence filled the room like a cold sweat. The innkeeper frowned. "They can't have made it this far west yet," he said softly. If not for the silence, it is unlikely anyone would have heard him, but they did. Their eyes pulled away from the thing on the table to stare mutely at the red-haired man. Jake found his voice first. "You know what this is?" The innkeeper's eyes were distant. "Scrael," he said distractedly. "I'd thought the mountains." "Scrael?" Jake broke in. "Blackened body of God coat. You've seen these things before?" "What?" The red-haired innkeeper looked up sharply, as if suddenly remembering where he was. "Oh, no. No, of course not." Seeing that he was the only one within arm's length of the dark thing, he took a measured step away. "Just something I heard." They stared at him. "Do you remember the trader that came through about 2 span ago?" They all nodded. "Bastard tried to charge me 10 pennies for a half-pound of salt," Cobb said reflexively, repeating the complaint for perhaps the 100th time. "Wish I'd bought some," Jake mumbled. Graham nodded a silent agreement. "He was a filthy shim," Cobb spat, seeming to find comfort in the familiar words. "I might pay 2 in a tight time, but 10 is robbery." "Not if there are more of those on the road," Shep said darkly. All eyes went back to the thing on the table. "He told me he'd heard of them over near Melcombe," Coate said quickly, watching everyone's faces as they studied the thing on the table. "I thought he was just trying to drive up his prices." "What else did he say?" Carter asked. The innkeeper looked thoughtful for a moment, then shrugged. "I didn't get the whole story. He was only in town for a couple hours." "I don't like spiders," the smith's apprentice said. He remained on the other side of a table some 15 feet away. "Cover it up." "It's not a spider," Jake said. "It's got no eyes." "It's got no mouth either," Carter pointed out. "How does it eat?" "What does it eat?" Shep said darkly. The innkeeper continued to eye the thing curiously. He leaned closer, stretching out a hand. Everyone edged even farther away from the table. "Careful," Carter said. "Its feet are sharp like knives." "More like razors," Coates said. His long fingers brushed the Squale's black, featureless body. "It's smooth and hard, like pottery." "Don't go messing with it," the smith's apprentice said. Moving carefully, the innkeeper took one of the long, smooth legs and tried to break it with both hands, like a stick. "Not pottery," he amended. He set it against the edge of the table and leaned his weight against it. It broke with a sharp crack. "More like stone." He looked up at Carter. "How did it get all these cracks?" He pointed at the thin fractures that crazed the smooth black surface of the body. "Nellie fell on it," Carter said. "It jumped out of a tree and started to climb all over her, cutting her up with its feet. It moved so fast, I didn't even know what was going on." Carter finally sank into the chair at Graham's urging. "She got tangled in her harness and fell on it, broke some of its legs. Then it came after me, got on me, crawling all over me." He crossed his arms in front of his bloody chest and shuddered. "I managed to get it off me and stomped it hard as I could. Then it got on me again." He trailed off, his face ashen. The innkeeper nodded to himself as he continued to prod the thing. "There's no blood, no organs, it's just gray inside." He poked it with a finger. "Like a mushroom." "Great, Telu, just leave it alone," the smith's apprentice begged. "Sometimes spiders twitch after you kill them." "Listen to yourselves," Cobb said scathingly. "Spiders don't get as big as pigs. You know what this is." He looked around, making eye contact with each of them. "It's a demon." They looked at the broken thing. "Oh, come on now," Jake said, disagreeing mostly out of habit. "It's not like—" He made an inarticulate gesture. "It can't just—" Everyone knew what he was thinking. Certainly there were demons in the world, but they were like Telu's angels. They were like heroes and kings. They belonged in stories. They belonged out there. Taborlin the Great called up fire and lightning to destroy demons. Telu broke them in his hands and sent them howling into the nameless void. Your childhood friend didn't stomp one to death on the road to Baden Brit. It was ridiculous. Coat ran his hand through his red hair, then broke the silence. "There's one way to tell for sure," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Iron or fire." He brought out a bulging leather purse. "And the name of God," Graham pointed out. "Demons fear 3 things: cold iron, clean fire, and the holy name of God." The innkeeper's mouth pressed itself into a straight line that was not quite a frown. "Of course," he said as he emptied his purse onto the table, then fingered through the jumbled coins. Heavy silver talents and thin silver bits, copper jots, broken halfpennies, and iron drabs. "Does anyone have a shim?" "Just use a drab," Jake said. "That's good iron." "I don't want good iron," the innkeeper said. "A drab has too much carbon in it. It's almost steel." "He's right," the smith's apprentice said. "Except it's not carbon. You use coke to make steel. Coke and lime." The innkeeper nodded deferentially to the boy. "You'd know best, young master. It's your business after all." His long fingers finally found a shim in the pile of coins. He held it up. "Here we are." "What will it do?" Jake asked. "Iron kills demons." Cobb's voice was uncertain. "But this one's already dead. It might not do anything." "One way to find out." The innkeeper met each of their eyes briefly, as if measuring them. Then he turned purposefully back to the table, and they edged farther away. Coat pressed the iron shim to the black side of the creature, and there was a short, sharp crackling sound, like a pine log snapping in a hot fire. Everyone startled, then relaxed when the black thing remained motionless. Cobb and the others exchanged shaky smiles, like boys spooked by a ghost story. Their smiles went sour as the room filled with the sweet, acrid smell of rotting flowers and burning hair. The innkeeper pressed the shim onto the table with a sharp click. "Well," he said, brushing his hands against his apron, "I guess that settles that. What do we do now?"